Barış Arduç Elçin Sangu, A Second Chance at Love. The evening air was soft, and the city seemed quieter than usual. Golden lights reflected across the streets as people hurried home, unaware that two familiar faces were about to cross paths again after a long time. Barış Arduç stepped out of a small cafe after finishing a meeting. He paused for a moment beside the entrance, looking at the busy street ahead. His mind was filled with thoughts about work, new opportunities, and all the changes that had happened over the years. Then, almost by coincidence, he heard a familiar voice. He turned. Across the street stood Elçin Sangu. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. There was something strangely familiar about the moment. They had known each other for years, shared countless conversations, laughter, and unforgettable memories. Yet time had created distance between them. Life had taken them in different directions, and their paths had rarely crossed. Barış smiled. Elçin? She looked toward him and smiled back. Barış. That single word brought back memories they had both thought they had placed safely in the past. Elçin crossed the street, and they stood facing each other. How long has it been? She asked. Too long, Barış replied with a quiet smile. They laughed softly. For a moment, everything around them seemed to disappear. They began talking about simple things at first. Work. Friends. Places they had visited. The strange ways life could change without warning. But beneath those ordinary words was something neither of them mentioned. A feeling. Not necessarily the same feeling they had once shared, but something close enough to make both of them wonder. Why did seeing each other again feel so natural? Why did a simple conversation suddenly feel important? Elçin glanced at the cafe behind Barış. Were you just leaving? Yes. But I don't have anywhere I need to be. She smiled. Then maybe we should have coffee. Barış nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. They returned to the cafe together. They chose a quiet table near the window. Outside, the city continued moving, but inside, time seemed to slow down. Their conversation became more personal. Elçin talked about how much she had changed over the years. She had learned to appreciate quiet moments, honest conversations, and people who made her feel comfortable enough to be herself. Barış listened carefully. I think I've changed too, he said. In what way? I used to think happiness was about always moving forward. New goals, new places, new challenges. And now? Now I think sometimes happiness is recognizing what was valuable before you were ready to appreciate it. Elçin became quiet. She understood exactly what he meant. Their eyes met. Neither looked away immediately. A small smile appeared on Elçin's face. That's a dangerous thought. Why? Because sometimes looking back makes you wonder what might have happened if you had made different choices. Barış leaned back slightly. Maybe some questions don't need answers immediately. Maybe, she said. The conversation continued late into the evening. They discovered that despite the years apart, they still understood each other's humor. They still knew when the other was joking and when something deeper was being hidden behind a smile. At one point, Elçin laughed so sincerely that Barış couldn't help smiling. I missed that, he said. What? That laugh. She stopped for a moment. Her expression softened. You remember? I remember more than you think. Those words stayed between them. Neither knew what to say next. When they finally left the cafe, the streets were quieter. The lights of the city reflected on the pavement, creating a peaceful glow. Elçin looked toward Barış. Thank you for tonight. I should be thanking you. For what? For reminding me that some conversations are worth having again. She smiled. Then maybe we shouldn't wait another few years. Barış looked at her. I was thinking the same thing. They exchanged numbers again, even though both knew they could have found a way to contact each other before. This time, however, it felt different. This wasn't about the past. It was about giving the future a chance. The next morning, Elsin woke up to a message. Coffee tonight? She stared at the screen for several seconds before smiling. She typed. Only if you promise not to disappear for years again. A reply arrived almost immediately. I promise. That evening, they met again. This time, there was no awkwardness. They walked through a quiet park, talking about dreams they had never shared before. Barış asked Elsin what she wanted from the future. She thought carefully. Something simple, she said. Peace. Trust. Someone I can laugh with. Someone who doesn't make everything complicated. Barış smiled. I think I want the same thing. They continued walking. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. Elsin looked at him. Do you ever wonder why people meet at certain moments in life? All the time. Maybe timing matters more than we realize. Barış stopped walking. So what do you think this timing means? Elsin looked into his eyes. I don't know yet. She smiled. But maybe we should find out. For the first time that evening, Barış had no clever answer. He simply smiled. Sometimes a second chance doesn't arrive with a dramatic announcement. Sometimes it begins with a simple conversation. A cup of coffee. A familiar smile. And two people realizing that perhaps the story they thought had ended was only waiting for the right moment to begin again. As they continued walking beneath the city lights, neither of them knew what the next chapter would bring. But for the first time in years, neither was afraid to find out. Barış Arduç Elçin Sangu, A Second Chance at Love. Part 2. The message arrived just before sunset. Are you free tonight? Elsin looked at the screen and immediately knew who it was. She smiled before replying. Why? A few seconds later, another message appeared. I want to show you something. She hesitated. There was something different about Barış lately. He was more open than before, more willing to talk about things he usually kept to himself. Finally, she replied. Where? Trust me. Elsin smiled. That answer makes me even more curious. When evening arrived, she followed his instructions and reached a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking. Hundreds of lights stretched across the horizon, while the evening sky slowly changed from blue to deep violet. Barış was standing near the railing. You came. You sounded mysterious, Elsin said. I had to find out why. He laughed. I thought you might change your mind. Maybe I almost did. Almost? Almost. They both smiled. For a while, they simply stood there, watching the city. Then Barış handed her a small paper bag. What is this? Open it. Inside was an old photograph. Elsin stared at it. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. It was a picture of the two of them from years ago. She laughed softly. You kept this? I didn't even realize I still had it. She looked at the photograph again. We looked so different. We were different. Elsin smiled. Do you ever miss those days? Barış looked toward the city. Sometimes. Only sometimes? He turned toward her. Maybe more than I admit. Her smile slowly disappeared. Why? Because back then, everything felt possible. Elsin looked down at the photograph. And now? Now we know how complicated life can become. There was a quiet pause. Then she asked, do you think we missed our chance? Barış didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her. I think we missed a moment. What is the difference? A moment can disappear. A chance can return. Elsin's eyes met his. Neither of them spoke. The wind moved gently around them. Finally, Elsin said, You really believe that? I do. She smiled. Then maybe this is our chance. Barış smiled back. But we shouldn't rush. I agree. They spent the rest of the evening talking. Not about what they had been. Not about what other people might think. They talked about what they wanted now. Elsin admitted that she had become more careful with her heart. I don't want something perfect, she said. I want something honest. Barış nodded. So do I. And I don't want promises that sound beautiful but disappear later. I wouldn't give you one. She looked at him. What would you give me? Barış smiled. Time. She didn't expect that answer. Time? Time to know each other again. Time to see whether this feeling is real. Time to let things happen naturally. Elsin smiled. That might be the best answer you've ever given me. They laughed. When the evening ended, Barış walked her to her car. Before she opened the door, she turned toward him. Tonight was beautiful. I wanted it to be. She paused. Can I ask you something? Anything. Will tomorrow be different? Barış smiled. I hope so. Why? Because tomorrow, I'll get to see you again. Elsin smiled warmly. Then tomorrow it is. The next morning, she woke up with an unexpected feeling of excitement. There was a message waiting for her. Good morning. She smiled. Good morning. What are you doing today? Working. After work? She thought for a moment. Maybe I'm free. Maybe? You'll have to convince me. A few minutes later, he replied. Dinner? She smiled at the screen. Deal. Their meetings became more frequent. A coffee here. A walk there. A quiet dinner. Nothing dramatic. Nothing forced. Yet every meeting brought them closer. They began discovering small things about each other that they had never noticed before. Barış learned that Elsin loved quiet mornings. Elsin discovered that Barış enjoyed long drives without a destination. They laughed about their differences. They appreciated their similarities. And slowly, something that had once been uncertain began to feel natural. One evening, they were walking beside the sea. The sunset painted the sky with warm colors. Elsin stopped and looked toward the horizon. Beautiful. Barış looked at her instead. Yes. She noticed. You weren't looking at the sunset. I know. She laughed. You're impossible. Maybe. They continued walking. Then Elsin's expression became serious. Barış? Yes? What happens if this becomes something more? He stopped. What do you want to happen? She looked at him. I don't know. That is okay. But I'm scared. So am I. She smiled slightly. You're actually admitting it? I've been scared since the beginning. Then why did you keep coming back? Barış looked at her. Because every time I leave, I realize I want to come back. Her expression softened. For a moment, neither of them moved. The sea was quiet behind them. The city lights were beginning to appear. Elsin finally whispered, Maybe that's our answer. Barış smiled. Maybe. They walked on together. There was still uncertainty ahead. There were still questions neither of them could answer. But they had stopped being afraid of those questions. Their story wasn't about returning to what they once had.